Welcome to Lesson 1.1, Expressions and Formulas. We will first start out with a couple 5-minute checks to make sure you remember some key algebra steps. Number 1, evaluate parentheses 12 minus 9, close parentheses, times 3. Okay. So the first thing you want to remember is your order of operations, so PEMDAS. And if you recall, P stands for parentheses. E stands for exponents. M is multiply. D, divide. A, addition. And S for subtraction. So first we want to start with P, parentheses. And we look and we see 12 minus 9. 12 minus 9 is 3. And the last thing we have is multiply, so 3 times 3 is 9, which is our answer. Looking at number 2, first thing we need to do is look at the parentheses, and we need to actually distribute the 5. Okay, so distribute the 5 to the 4 and the 5 to the n. Recall that the distributive property is an algebra property which is used to multiply a single term and 2 or more terms inside a set of parentheses. And I've shown you the rule. We have A times the quantity B plus C, and that's equal to A times B plus A times C. So essentially, we're going to do the exact same thing. This is going to be 5 times 4 plus 5 times n. And then we have to add on our plus 6n. Now it becomes combining like terms. 5 times 4 is 20, and then 5n plus 6n is 11n. So our answer is 20 plus 11n. Our next problem is a teeny bit harder. Okay, here we have two fractions, and anytime you combine fractions, you have to make sure that you have a common denominator. So if we look at the problem, and we look at the first fraction, we see that we have an a and a b. If we look at the second fraction, we have an a squared. So we need to look at both of these and see what we're missing. Okay, the first fraction, we need this to be an a squared. So what I can do is I can actually take the bottom and multiply by an a. The only thing is, you can't just multiply the bottom, you have to multiply the top as well. Because essentially anything divided by itself is 1. So we're technically not changing the problem, we're just changing the look of it. Okay? So that first fraction is going to be 5a over a squared times b. Okay? Now, let's look at what we're missing on the second problem. Okay? We have an a squared, however, in order for it to match my first fraction, I need a b as well. Okay, so I'm going to take this fraction and multiply by b over b. Because if you think about it, b over b is just 1. When you multiply by 1, you don't actually change the problem. So my second fraction will be 4b over a squared times b. Now that we have a common denominator, a common bottom, we can actually add the tops. Okay, so we get 5a plus 4b over a squared times b. Since 5 has a last name of a and 4 has a last name of b, we have to keep them separate. So this is our final answer. Number 4, what is the area of a square with sides of 15 centimeters? When you're given a shape, you need to make sure you draw your picture first. And in this case, we need a square. Okay, so a square has all sides that are the same. So I'm going to show that by the tip marks, and we know that it has one right angle. And it says it has a side of 15 centimeters, so 15 centimeters. And it's asking for the area. If you recall, the area of a square is side squared, or its base times height. Now we just plug into the formula. Okay, area equals 15 squared, which is equal to 225 centimeters squared. Now I would like you to try a problem. Number 6. Chairs for a wedding can be rented at the cost shown in the table. Based on the pattern in the table, what is the cost to rent 250 chairs? Okay. If we take a look at the number of chairs, we see that the difference between 150 is 50. Difference between 100 and 150 is 50. And the next one is 50 as well. So we can assume that we're going to go to 250 chairs, and that's going to be a difference of 50 as well. Now, if we look at the cost, if we take 250 minus 125, we see that there's a difference of $125. The same for 375 and 50 is 125. And 500 minus 375 is 125. So since this is uniform and we have the same differences on both sides, we can then add 125 to 500 to get 625. You can also do this by graphing them. And you can see that it forms a linear graph. So now that we've reviewed a little bit, let's talk about some new vocabulary. We're going to be talking about variables, algebraic expressions, the order of operations, and formulas. Okay, so a key concept, order of operations. Evaluate the expressions inside grouping symbols. Step number 2, evaluate all powers. Step number 3, multiply or divide from left to right. That is very, very, very important, left to right. It's like you read, you go from left to right, okay? Step number 4, you add or subtract. Now, we've seen this before as PEMDAS, and if you recall from the first slide, we wrote that out. PEMDAS. So now we will try our first example. We are going to evaluate x minus y cubed plus 3 if x is 1 and y is 4. Anytime you're given an x and a y, or any quantity for a variable, you will always use parentheses. That is very, very, very important. So now we plug in what we know. We know that x is going to be 1 minus y, which is 4, and that will be cubed, and we are adding 3. Okay, so according to our order of operations, the first thing we look at is our parentheses. Here we have 1 minus 4. 1 minus 4 is negative 3, and we're cubing that. Okay, so what this means is this is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 plus 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Positive 9 times negative 3 is negative 27 plus 3. Okay. Negative 27 plus 3 is negative 24. Now I would like you to try an example. Example number 2 will be like example number 1. Evaluate a plus b times 2 times the quantity a minus b if a equals 4 and b is negative 2. Now remember, when you're plugging in values, always use parentheses. So, a is 4 plus b is negative 2 times 2 times a, which is 4, minus negative 2. Now, do you see why I say use parentheses? Because if you didn't, you might have missed that this is going to be a negative times a negative. Alright, so let's clean this up a little bit. The 4, we can drop the parentheses. There's no negative being multiplied. Here we have a positive and a negative, so that's going to be a minus 2 times 2, parentheses. We don't have a negative in front of here, so we can drop those. So 4 minus, and we're going to keep the parentheses on the negative 2 here. So that's a little bit easier to see. Now we're going to follow our order of operations, PEMDAS. First we're going to do the parentheses. So 4 minus negative 2 is 6. So we have 4 minus 2 times 2. Now, we don't have any exponents, but we do have some multiplication. We're going to take negative 2 times 2 times 6. And notice I am moving from left to right. Okay? So negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 6 is negative 24. So we have 4 minus 24. 4 minus 24 is negative 20. Now I would like you to try a problem. Now we will try a real-world example. The formula for the volume of a pyramid is V equals 1/3 base area times height, where big B represents the base of the area, or the area of the base, and H is the height of the pyramid. What is the volume of the pyramid shown below? If you notice, the base here is a square. Okay? So in order to find this area, we're going to take side squared, which is just 5 squared. That's 25 centimeters, and that represents big B. Okay? So the volume is equal to 1/3 times 25, because we replaced big B with 25, times the height, as we can see, is 6. When you multiply 1/3 times 25 times 6, you get 50 centimeters cubed. And it's cubed because it is volume. And you must make sure that you put your units. Now, for the last one, you will try it. Thank you for watching the tutorial on 1.1 expressions and formulas. See you in the next video.